Hello, welcome to episode 5 of our What Drives You podcast here at Paper Transport. I'm Keith Stelzer, our Vice President of Safety and Recruiting here, and joined by a couple of new guests today. Really excited about that, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Bridget Nygaard, Director of Business Development at Paper Transport.
Hello, I'm Kristina. I'm Director of Intermodal Logistics.
Fantastic. Thank you both for taking the time to join us. Really excited about a conversation today, focusing on maybe the two areas that you really specialize in. Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit how you got into the industry. So, Kristina, if you want to go first, that'd be great. Love to understand that further.
Yeah, sure. So happy accident, realistically. I was recently married, was about to have a kid, and had a degree in psychology and was burnt out of the industry. And so knew a person that worked in the industry, found out a local company was hiring, and 17 plus years later, I'm still here.
Wow, that is crazy. Okay. All right. Awesome. Bridget, how about you?
Born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I went away to college with the intent of never coming back to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Plans changed, brought me back here. Out of school, I was doing a little bit in television. I had a communication degree. From there, I went into banking, which I really liked, but the environment isn't something that I saw a lot of career progression. So I took a job for a local transportation company, and 20 plus years later, my career has evolved with a lot of opportunity, a lot of learning, and a lot of continual challenges, which has been fantastic.
Awesome. Well, prior TV, I'm hearing future podcast regular.
Behind the scenes TV.
Okay, great. So I want to shift gears and kind of just get a pulse from the two of you. What things are you seeing? What are you hearing right now in the industry in your roles?
Yeah, so recently I just was out at the IANA conference in Long Beach, California, and I got the opportunity to meet with a bunch of our dray carriers and some of our rail providers and other IMCs. And everyone is feeling kind of the same pinch point of rate and seeing the overall volume from our customers lower than where it was last year and continuing to have a slight decline. Realistically, we're looking at Q4 this year being pretty monotone. There is no one talking about a peak season, which traditionally in intermodal you would see, especially starting out at the end here in September, going through into October, November. Realistically, though, we're not going to see much of a peak, if anything at all. Now, the bigger buzz out there was what's going to happen with truckload rates and available spot drivers with the auto worker strike that's going on right now.
Right.
We are currently, in day 4, I think, of it. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like either side of the table is really moving. So the longer that goes on, the lower we're going to see DAP rates go for over the road, which for intermodal means more conversion to over the road. So,
away from intermodal, great.
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what we're looking at, though, too, is outside of those over the road conversions, the freight that does move on the rail for auto manufacturers is also going to be lessened. And what that will do is it could potentially cause trains to actually be canceled or delayed while they wait to fill up with the amount of freight that they need to viably move from ramp to ramp.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, think about that. On the truckload side, load is full, it moves. Right, on a train, certainly some other delays to think about there.
Yeah. So what we are doing as far as our team is we're continually monitoring those trains. We're making sure that we're getting in on the earliest cutoff if possible. So multiple trains will go out on a specific leg every day. Now, if you can get in on the earliest one, that means that that's going to obviously be the one that fills up first. So if you can get in early enough with your appointment times and your drayage carriers in gate, you more than likely should leave that same day, which when we take a look at our delivery appointments and the way we set them up, as long as that train departs on that day, regardless of what time of day it departs, we should still be able to make delivery.
Good. Awesome. How about you, Bridget? Anything different on the truckload or brokerage side of the world?
Sure. So the trends that we look at are a little bit broader because intermodal is part of the suite of services that we sell. Dedicated, OTR, brokerage, and power only are other services that we sell. So we're really looking at, market trends and buying activity and what are our shippers looking at. So One of the areas that we focus on is consumer spending.
Right.
What is that trending? What does that look like? And what are we envisioning it will be in the future? And it's slowly increasing, but what we're seeing it increase is with basic necessities. So inflation is also much higher. So when you see the increase, it's not an overall increase, it's a smaller increase because the inflation is so much higher. So it doesn't tell you that there's more demand. It's the cost structure is what's really throwing it out of whack.
Okay, so it's not necessarily volume increase, more so a dollar level increase.
The spending is up slightly, but the inflation is up exorbitantly.
Yes.
So that's where it differs, and you have to look at the numbers holistically.
Yeah.
So following that trend, total load activity is steady. It's showing small signs of growth, but it's nowhere near numbers we were in 2022.
Okay.
And when we will reach those again, nobody's crystal ball or anticipation has even given a glimmer of an idea when that will happen. The other thing that's interesting is the volume of carriers that continue to leave the marketplace is continual and often and a lot. But there's enough carriers coming up behind it that we haven't really felt that pinch yet.
Right.
I'm sure Kristina has felt that in the dray market on the intermodal side of the business as well. So when you follow the trend of carriers leaving the marketplace, it's a lot.
Right.
When we feel that pinch is when we'll start to see some change, and we haven't felt it yet. Diesel prices have had continual increases, and as of late, really sharp increases. Typically, transportation providers can manage through those when they have quick up and downs, but when it keeps going up, up, these smaller carriers are not gonna be able to make it. So we're gonna continue to see that volume of carriers leave the marketplace. As it relates to shippers, the one thing that they've been doing all year and continue to do is much more frequent pricing activities.
Okay.
They have taken opportunities where they've had multi-mode strategies and they've gone to spot market because the rates are so volatile and they can gain from budgets that they may have lost last year. So we see a lot more of quarterly RFPs than the traditional annual RFP with our current shippers.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Kristina, maybe flipping back into maybe some of the specifics of intermodal, as you think about that, how does intermodal as a whole or maybe as a function differ from truck transportation? Like, what are some of the differences and maybe some similarities as well?
Yeah, so your basic similarity is you have a shipper, you have a receiver, but one of the more obvious differences is the amount of times that you have to track that specific order. So oftentimes we get asked about security. How are you keeping track of our freight on the rail? How are you keeping track of it versus an over-the-road carrier? So I would actually argue that an intermodal move is more secure than an over-the-road movement. And basically it's because once it's on the rail, it's consistently moving. You're not having a driver take their DOT rest at a truck stop that we all know are overpopulated and very difficult to find a parking spot for. So even if you have a secured load, you're not necessarily going to be able to have that over-the-road driver back up against the wall or do all of those safety precautions just because there may simply not be a space available for them to do that in. But with the intermodal movements, they're consistently moving on the rail. You also are going into gated areas on both ends for your origin and destination ramp that are highly monitored. So in order to be able to move in and out of one of those ramps, you have to have clearance with the railroads to begin with. The Union Pacific has actually gone a step further and is now requiring that drayage carriers, if they're going to bobtail in, to actually go out onto their app and make sure that they secure, yes, I'm coming in without a container. And just so that's an additional security check so that they're not having trucking companies come in without a container and leave with one when they potentially weren't even supposed to be there in the first place.
Right. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, behind the scenes, what because you've been around the business for so long and in different facets, what might be different behind the scenes as far as employee needs or processes that you need to complete? I know from initial dray, to final delivery, there's a lot more moving parts, but what else might be different behind the scenes?
Yeah, so we're actually not just looking at our individual network, we're looking at multiple networks. So for us, not having our own assets, we rely heavily on the different rail assets and then private box assets that we have agreements with. But we have 6 different types of boxes that we can move our freight on, which means that we have to be cognizant of 6 different networks and who has boxes available in what market, who needs to move them to different areas of the country, and where can we take advantage of those needs, and how do we balance that with our customers' needs. So when do we flip what type of a piece of equipment we're using or what railroad we're going to in-gate to. And then also when a specific railroad is having delays because of a washout or something that's going on that's out of their control, when do we pull the trigger to then move to a different rail line to move that freight too? So
just to clarify,
Yeah.
the assets specifically are the containers.
correct.
Because we use a variety of asset, non-asset mix for the dray,
Oh,
the
yeah,
dray move.
absolutely, yes. So, I mean, we have our own asset drivers that are in key drayage markets for us across the country. We also have secondary carriers that we work with that we have agreements set up with to move our freight from time to time too. But absolutely the asset in this case is that container. So we're managing those networks on top of managing our customers in and outbound flows and making sure that we're looking at all of those markets and how they overlap together. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, definitely a lot of moving parts. Bridget, really interested to understand, what are customers talking about right now? I mean,
Sure.
where is their mindset at with how close you are to those?
How long can we continue to save money in the spot market
Right,
is
right.
really is the game that shippers are playing right now. And looking at post COVID and how volatile the market was, and really the demand was consumption and demand was just all over the place. I mean,
Right.
things that they had traditionally budgeted and historically managed essentially was thrown out the window and they had to start over, right?
Right.
So in an environment like this, the game is how long can we manage like this before that worm turns? And what I will say is shippers that are utilizing a multimodal approach are going to be in a much better position because they're going to be prepared when that happens.
Right.
Versus, we have customers today that are reaching out saying, I want to plan for the next 6 to 9 months ahead. I want to be ready and not be left without capacity. So we're having those conversations to say, you know what, a multimodal approach from OTR, our asset division, to utilizing our brokerage division, which has an arm of limitless amount of third-party carriers,
Right.
to our intermodal option, which is, we have access to over 80,000 containers in the marketplace with all of our rail providers. So really making sure that they understand all of the options available to them. Again, they may not make that change right at the moment, but it's responsible for us to have that partnership with them to help them understand how it will benefit. And then the other one is dedicated. Paper transport has historically been built on our dedicated service
Right.
offering. That's really where we excel, where we do exceptionally well, and the customers we serve will tell you that.
Right.
So in addition to multimodal, utilizing dedicated for high service, high touch, and guaranteed capacity are absolute conversations that we're having right now with a lot of our shippers to say, let's get ready. So it's a benefit to you and a benefit to us at the same time.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. You brought up a point before with maybe some smaller carriers having to exit the marketplace, right? In addition to that, you have large carriers that you don't see those signs because they may shut down, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 trucks at a time.
Right.
But you're not seeing them exit the marketplace. But as you think about that, when the market shifts back, where do you think customers are going to initially kind of grab? Where are they going to lean to? Because like you said, the spot market is that's the first worm that's going to shift. And
Sure.
when that starts to go, everything else is going to follow. So are there certain avenues you think that they'll go to in sequential order, or like you said, is a multimodal focus all the time the best?
I think they're going to ride through the brokerage, utilizing third-party capacity as long as they can. It will become tight and the cost will increase quickly when it happens. But those conversations, they're going to go into an intermodal configuration or a dedicated configuration. And again, I think a lot of those savvy shippers are
Right.
doing some of that discovery today. Intermodal is not just a transcontinental solution. It's a regional solution as well. So I think when push comes to shove, it's our job to make sure that our customers understand what's available to them to help achieve their budgetary goals and what they're trying to manage. And when it tightens, I would say dedicated and intermodal are definitely the areas that are gonna grow quickly.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
And to jump onto your regional aspect for
Sure.
intermodal, a lot of times that's one of the things that people have as a misconception, that it's going to take so much longer than over the road transit. But when you're looking at a Chicago to Pennsylvania transit time, you're really adding in 16 hours of total transit from an over the road carrier to our intermodal offering. So, I mean, realistically, the amount of cost savings that you can see could very well be worth 16 hours of transit time
Right.
differential.
Easily.
And so that's, again, oftentimes people say, if you're going to go over 500 miles, you should be fine for rail. You can do that. But you can get in that really close to 500 mile mark and still make it make sense.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So in relation to kind of the multimodal approach, right? I think something that a lot of our core customers think about is sustainability, right? What does that look like within each line of business, right? I mean, I think there's significant limitations on the spot side of the world, what you can really focus on the sustainability side. But what other modes really kind of fit well into that mindset and that approach that many of our customers are keyed into?
Oh yeah, intermodal absolutely is a player in that regard. We've got rail lines that are continually making their engines even more efficient. They all have sustainability goals themselves. So that's first and foremost. I mean, we've got the CSX, NS, and all of the major class 1 railroads right now going out and actually telling their customers, here's your carbon credit. Here's how you actually can go out and actually turn your emission savings into carbon credits, or here is what your CO2 impact is. They're just providing that on their websites right now.
Right.
They understand that that is the way, post price and everything that's going on in this market, that shippers are heavily going to lean into. The other part for us too is we've got on our drayage end the ability to not only use the rail and kind of use that carbon neutrality aspect, but we can double down with using alternative fuel trucks. So RNG is a heavy player for us. And I think Bridget's probably going to talk a little bit more about that in the dedicated space because she's really familiar with it there. But for intermodal dray, now instead of using diesel fuel to move your shipments, that 30, 40 miles of dray from the rail ramp, you can use an RNG asset and definitely make a larger impact.
Right.
I'd say when it comes to sustainability, organizationally, I mean, I think safety is our number one value. That's our go-to-market is safety, but sustainability is right behind that. And I just think who we are and how we go to market and what we do and provide to our customers, sustainability is right there. And not only is it with the suite of services that we offer, intermodal obviously it's just an obvious option, right? So to Kristina's point, a shipper can go in and look at what emissions would be with a rail move versus a truck move. And we have some of that content on our website, so I'd invite anybody to go take a look. But to her point, we can also utilize CNG and RNG equipment. So it's just an alternative fuel for smaller distances that allows them to build that into their plan. So really the conversation that I like to have with shippers is, what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals and what is your timeline? I think intermodal is top of mind often. Dedicated is absolutely an option as well, because dedicated are usually smaller miles, closed routes, where we can retrofit that equipment to fit within that area. So CNG, we've had great success with some fleets in the Southeast as well as in the Midwest. We have some RNG equipment that we've utilized. We have looked at electric as well. So we invest in our equipment to provide our shippers with what they need to achieve their goals. So multimodal equipment. And then the other thing that is worth mentioning is how our drivers are managed. That is the core of who we are and the success of our drivers. They're essentially, as Dan Depler would like to say, it's pay for sustainability. So they are compensated for behaving in a fuel responsible manner, which in the end is a benefit to our organization and our customers. So when I say it's the core of who we are, it's definitely safety and sustainability. And depend upon what those customers' plans are, we can work with them to achieve that within the timeline that they have.
It's a great point. I think, from the outside looking in, right, and you hear all the buzz right around all these future things, whether it's electric or hydrogen, but right, you can look
now,
back to the right now, or look back to the history of where we came from.
Right.
And there's some things right there, right at the fingertips of people that really want to
Mhm.
have a here and now impact on the environment and sustainability. So
Yep.
thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah.
If you have a topic you'd like to see us discuss, please drop it in the comments box and we'll be happy to discuss it in the future. Thanks so much.